Thank you so much. Our last speaker this evening is Dr. Hal Barkley, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a licensed professional counselor, and presently the director of the counseling program at SMU. Before he began teaching at SMU, he worked as a school counselor and educator for 35 years with the Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD. He has written several articles in counseling journals and made presentations at a number of national meetings. Please welcome Dr. Hal Barkley.
Dina came to my office about a year ago, and she had this idea, and she talked about an hour about it. And by the time she left, I was very worried. And the reason I was worried was because I thought, this is going to happen. And so I'd better get used to it, and I better start learning what she's talking about. And so one of the things she did, she gave all the panelists all this information. It was like taking a course. And so we had to learn all sorts of things, so I started doing some reading. I learned a term that I did not know. Some of you may know it. The term is called consilience. Do you know that word? I did not know that word. Dan Siegel talks about a gentleman from UCLA, a neuroscientist. And he defines consilience as seeking out convergent knowledge across different disciplines. I thought, so Dina's own discipline. My job tonight is to talk a little bit about mental health. That last term you used for us was, how do you say the last term? To whom I come?
My humble, Rob, I can probably set that straight.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think what you said is that is like to heal the human being. And that's what we teach our students to do, hopefully, when they come to our master's program and learn to be marriage and family counselors, LPCs, school counselors, and the like. The first thing they have to do when they get there is they have to take a counseling theory class. And in that theory class, we present to them across the disciplines all of these various theories. And there is Rogers, Freud, Jung, Ellis, and you go on and on and on. When I teach that class, as in Adlerian, I tell them that my bias is that I've always had an Adlerian base. Alfred Adler is my man. And so it's always a little scary to me when I get at the end of the term when quite a few of them will choose Adler as their base, because we tell them by the time you get to practicum and by the time you get to internship, you need to have one theory so that you may work from that and then you can grow from there. So we teach our students this, and I think what I always tell myself is that I'm not biasing them as I'm teaching that course, but they really are drawn to Adler. So I want to share some of Alfred Adler with you tonight so that maybe you will be drawn to him too. Brief history, for those of you who may not know, and some of the students could teach this better than I because they're getting ready for LPC exams probably. Adler was born in Vienna. He was Jewish. He later converted over to Christianity, and that's a story within itself. But along the way, he became an ophthalmologist, and ultimately got interested in psychology and was invited to Sigmund Freud's Wednesday night, here we are, discussion dinners about the field of psychology. That was in 1902 when Adler first attended that, and he and Freud were colleagues. I always point that out. A lot of times you hear that Adler was a disciple of Freud, but I think that's inaccurate. I think they were colleagues. By 1910, they differed on a lot of things. Carl Jung was also part of that dinner community, and he left that community in 1914. So there were some differences of opinion. Freud believed that the human personality got to where it was because we are sexual beings. Jung said we are spiritual beings. And Adler finally decided that we are social beings. And that's what drives us towards becoming the person that we become. Adler started out studying aggression, and that was his interest. But that slowly changed, and he became interested in the fact that maybe we come into this world with inferiority feelings, and those are natural, and those are normal, and we deal with those all of our life. World War I came along. He served in the war as a medical officer, and by the time he returned, he was transformed, and he had decided that the fact that we were social beings, that was what he wanted to spend the rest of his life teaching, and so that's what he did. As part of his belief system about how personality develops, he ultimately said that the central criterion for mental health is social interest, the concept of social interest. And translated, there's a lot of translations of that from German, but the best translation, and the one he liked in English the most, was a regard for the welfare of others. That's what social interest means, and that's basically what he believed. So when a person comes to therapy, if they are lacking in social interest, that may lead them to feeling inferior, that may lead them to feeling discouraged. He saw mental illness as not a sickness, but as discouragement. And so this concept of social interest is where he would start. Now there was a second criterion, and that second criterion was activity. So being interested in the welfare of others and doing something, acting on it, was part of the way you found or rediscovered your emotional stability. So that's a real quick view, a snapshot of Adler. In terms of therapy, another term that he often used was the word usefulness. And people who can see themselves as being useful in society, in their culture, in their towns, in their community, in their family, have the best chance of achieving emotional health. And so he tied that into social interest as well. So that's like I like flipping through the Bible in 5 minutes, you know? From one end to the other. So that's what we just kind of did with Adler. What I like to tell my students is, when I'm talking about Adler in class, I share with them a story. So I thought, I'm going to share that story this evening with you. And the story is a simple one, but it explains what happens to a lot of therapists at the beginning. And this was back in the 80s when in my private practice, and I had a woman come in, and she was in a bad place in life. She had gone through a divorce, and it was one of those days, you know, that was dark and dreary anyway, and so the session just seemed to get darker and more dreary. And so by the time it was time to go, I was thinking, what do I really have to offer this woman? And so what I teach the students is that when you are in doubt, when you don't know, then go to your theory or go to your belief system. And so I go to my theory, and so it came to me, and so I asked the lady, I said, you know, when you leave here and your way home, where are you going? Can you have anything to do on the way there? She says, no, I'm going straight to my apartment. It's going to be a lonely night. I said, well, I have a suggestion for you. Is there a Hallmark card store on the way home from your house? And she said, well, yes, there is. I thought, oh, I don't know where they are. But she knew that there was one there. And so I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop at the Hallmark store, and I want you to go in, and I want you to think of a friend, a coworker, family member, somebody in your life that you know that's really having a hard time right now. I said, you know someone like that? She said, well, sure, yeah, I do. I think there's somebody immediate. I said, I want you to buy a card for that person. I want you to take it home. You can write on it any message that you would like, and then mail it. And when you come back next week, we're going to talk about that. She came back the next week. She had done her assignment activity. And so we discussed that and what meaning that might have in her life. And so when she left that night, I said, by the way, will you go by the Hallmark store again? And she said, sure. I said, what I want you to do is I want you to go in, choose a card that you would choose for yourself, that you like. Go home, write a message on it, put it in the mail. It'll come the next day or 2 days. And then when you come back next week, we'll discuss that. Sometimes Adler's theory is set aside as being simplistic, but sometimes therapy can be simplistic if you have a theory that works for your client. And that was the beginning, really, for her of recovering from what she had experienced. And we continued to design therapy around the possibilities of her helping other people while helping herself. So that in, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe, was a thumbnail sketch of Adler. I'm going to sit down and we'll let Dina come up, and she's going to guide us through some more discussions. Am I correct?
We are going to open it up for questions, so if anyone has a question, we can take that now. Any questions? I can start with a question while people are gathering their thoughts.